Welcome to another episode of the Finding Serenity in the Midst of Chaos podcast. Today, we are going to talk about why do you always seek permission from others to do things in life that you want to do? If you're the kind of person who always does exactly that and never can decide what's important to you or what's best for yourself, then this is the episode for you. So stay tuned. Hi, Ian. Good morning.
Oh, hi, Chula. Can I talk to you now? Is that okay?
That's okay. Ian likes to demonstrate with
Oh,
examples
there you go.
what we're going to talk about.
Straight into the demonstration. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
indeed. So I think you brought this up in a few weeks ago, in one of our episodes, seeking permission, asking permission and validation from the
Yeah,
outside world.
wasn't it the episode where you put me on the spot constantly for half an hour, interviewing me and
Oh, maybe it was. I don't know. I
I
think it
think
was. Yeah.
the reasons for working with, the benefits of working with you
Yeah.
and what I've learned in the
Mm,
last 4 years of recordings, etc. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
sure. Yeah, that would have come up because that's
Mm,
yeah, that's been one of the. So yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this, between sort of last week and this week, knowing what was coming up, because we were saying kind of last week's leads on to this,
that's right.
this episode in some ways, as we were talking about feeling good
Mm,
enough in yourself
yeah.
last week. So I was thinking there are times about just asking permission for things.
Mm,
If you're in a restaurant with a group of people or something, that you need an extra chair for one of
mm,
you and there's a spare chair behind, you can kind of just go and grab it because I don't need to ask, I'll just grab it. So it's not about asking permission, not about rudeness or
mm,
not being polite or not having human etiquette between one another. You would just go to that person and say, oh, do you mind if I take this seat from my friend? Oh,
yes.
no, my husband's sitting there, he's just ordering the meal, he's coming back. Okay, I'll go to another table. Could
Mm,
I take this? You get what I mean. it's
yeah, I
it's
do. Yeah.
there are times you don't we're not advertising you don't need to ask or be polite or have
Mm,
normal human engagement in doing things. It's more about yourself, isn't it, and the things
yeah.
that are
So
important to you that you want to do, that actually
exactly.
you don't need to ask anybody
Mm.
before
Let's
you decide. Is that right? Is that kind
That's
of where
right. I
we're
think
going?
let's make the distinction asking for permission for the things that we want to do for ourselves
Yeah.
and that is important to us and kind of almost what we want to do next. We talked about a couple of weeks ago as well. What do I want to
Yeah.
do next with my life? And you go and ask seven people, what should I do? What should I do? What do you think I should do? And you already have an idea in your head, but
Mm.
you can't bring yourself to say yes and decide and go for it. And why is
Mm.
that? Because a few reasons. One,
Okay. Yep.
that is how we were brought up.
Mm.
Starting with these little things that you just gave the example, may I take the chair? May I go to the toilet? May I have some water? May I do this? May I do that? Yes, you may. Yes, no, you may not. You
Mm.
know, you don't speak until you're spoken to, all these sort of old fashioned ways of being. And
Yes.
that's why you're just become so overridden with all the permission based living.
Mm. Right.
But then, because you learn that at an early age, your little brain at that time decides, yeah, I have to ask permission for everything else that I do, that I need to do. Then you can't, as you grow up, you can't make the distinction. Is it something that's important to me? Does it involve other people? Do they really
Right.
care? Is it any of their business? You automatically ask for that permission because it became a belief and a way of being that
Mm.
you have to ask for permission.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so number one, that's because it's a pattern and you can't stop that because you're not aware that you're doing it. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So again, yep, it's the awareness thing, isn't it?
Mm,
Cropping up again here.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the second
Okay.
reason we keep doing that is because it's self-doubt. We are not sure whether we are good enough, whether we don't know whether it's the right decision or not, because we are scared what the outcome might be. We are
Mm.
scared of what others might think. And we are scared that what would that mean about me if other people think this and that and whatever. So as a
Right.
result, you keep asking for that permission from others,
You
right?
answered the question I was going to ask.
Okay,
What
what was
what
that?
is it that makes us? What are we frightened of? Where's the
Yeah.
fear coming from? It's about yourself, isn't it? Am I good enough? And it's about what will other people think of me?
Yeah.
Now, I have to say something here. One of the
Okay.
things that I forgot to say when you kind of interviewed me about working with you for 4 years and the things that I'd learned,
Mm.
one of the things was that what people actually think about you is none of your business.
Mm.
Never mind saying to somebody, don't worry about what he thinks. Don't worry about what she thinks.
Mm.
You might advise somebody. I might say to Daniel, or son, or my wife, Anna, oh, don't worry about what so and so. But actually, it really is none of your business what
Mm.
anybody else thinks. So I think that is such a powerful thing
It is.
to open up that awareness and overcome those things you've just been talking about that were drilled into us when our brains were small and growing and developing, and
Yeah.
things that have stuck. But it's that I'd have never thought of that. It's none of my business what other people think of me, but it's so helpful.
Mm. And
If
it's funny,
Yeah,
isn't it, when you think about it, it's none of your business because this, we're not being rude here. It's
that's
none of
right.
your
Again,
business
yeah,
because it's to do with what they're thinking in their head. And let's just give a really, prime example here,
yeah, yeah,
especially asking for permission for a decision that really involves you. If you ask
yeah,
your
yeah,
best friend, let's imagine that you have this dream job, you're moving to another country or, somewhere far away, that which means that you no longer get to keep in touch as much with your
yeah.
best friend as you would
Oh wow.
normally do. And you
Indeed.
ask your best friend, should I do this? What will your best friend say to you?
No,
If
don't do it.
No, exactly. And it's she's not thinking about you, she's thinking about herself. Because if you go, she's going to be sad. If you
Yeah.
go, you're no longer going to be, interacting in the same way anymore. So what she's thinking about herself when she says no,
Mhm.
don't do it. If she thought about you, if she knew what was best for you, she would have said, well, of course, go for it. This is your
Mhm.
dream job. This is what you waited for all
Yeah.
your life,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and
So in that respect, it's none of your business what that other person thinks, because
yeah,
it's actually not in your best interest, and they're
because they
thinking only
are they are making decisions from their selfish point of
right.
view,
Uh-huh.
without giving a single consideration what you might or you might not think. They're making emotional decisions, and of course you can also make emotional decisions, but
Yeah.
then sometimes that's kind of your brain fools you thinking that you're making the right decision by not going, because you don't want to upset anybody else. You're not going to be
Yeah.
upset if you don't go. But then what it's really doing is to trying to keep you safe in that place of familiarity that so this is why
Yeah.
men making big decisions like moving to a different country or taking another job in a different location or whatever. Your brain will always try and keep you safe, and so will love
Mm.
your loved ones, unless they are selfless. My mom and dad and my family would probably love to have kept me back,
Sure.
right in front of them or in a different city in Turkey.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to, I didn't have to, but I chose to move to a whole different country and stay here.
Hmm.
My argument at the time was, you know what, it's going to be hard anyway because we're not going to be in the same city. It's 8 hours to travel from that city to where my mom and dad lived, or 3 hours to travel from UK to Turkey. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It still takes a day, give or
That
take with
that's
all the
that's right. That
stuff.
separation is there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what is important to me right now and what will give me the best feature is this decision. Therefore, we all have to make. And they did come to that decision and help me make that decision as well.
Right.
But it was hard for all of us. So sometimes it is hard, but
Yeah.
asking for permission from other people to do this,
Mm.
or asking for their opinion, for their own input, could lead you to the wrong place. How you decide is how you feel about it. How you
Mm.
feel about it when everything is stripped away, and that feeling will sit on you either as an elated, light, excited feeling, or just like a ton of bricks really in your heart or in your gut
Yeah.
somewhere. So that's
Yeah.
how you make your decisions. But anyway, so this is the second reason why we make the decisions based on other people's permission or other people's opinions.
Mm.
I call it kind of an external living.
Right. Yeah.
And
Okay. Yeah.
um but
That was
then
the second one. Yeah.
that was the second one. And the third one is, again, will I feel good enough? am I good enough to make this decision myself? Am I feel good if I make this decision and go with this? Will others approve of me? Will others like me? Will it's two basic fears, as we talked about and as I talked about in so many of my classes: fear of feeling good enough, being good enough, or fear of abandonment. Being good enough, as in people around you, will your boss think you're good enough? And the second is abandonment. Will people that love me abandon me? And if they do, then what will I do? And because of that, we ask constantly for what's important and how can we do this from other people, even though we know it's not the right decision, even though we know that I haven't got the time for this, even though I know that it is too much for me to handle right now. But if I don't do it, what will others think of me? This is why we look for that external permission all the time. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's led me to think that also, in your own situation there of coming from Turkey, coming from different environment into to the UK, you kind of wanted to ask that it was important for you to ask the people that you love, the people that but you chose to do that, didn't you? You didn't probably feel compelled to. I don't know. Am I explaining? Is that your experience, or am I kind of not getting the right?
What do you mean specifically?
That you didn't just kind of decide, oh well, I'm going. You did have the conversation with your family, but not everybody. You had it with some key people that are important to you emotionally, that you loved, your key family. You did have that conversation.
Well, you know what? At that point in time, it wasn't really even a decision. It just had to be done. It was what it was.
Okay.
There was no dilemma. Should I go? Should I not go? It was going to happen.
Right.
And I knew even before I had to go through some exams to come to gain the scholarship. I knew already that I got that in the bag in some way.
Right. Okay.
Not in an arrogant way, but I just knew in my heart of hearts.
Sure. Yeah.
And
it felt right
sad.
For you.
It felt right, but it also felt so heavy and so sad because I knew that I had to move away. But at the same time, it felt right because that's what had to happen for my future to be what it was. And that's why sometimes even hardest decisions, and my family, of course, despite them feeling bad about it, in terms of we don't want you to move away to a whole new country, they still supported it because they also knew that this was the right thing for me to get me to the right future and whatever. So
okay, no, that's clear.
In that case, it was an example of your loved ones may or may not give you the right answer because they will be selfish in thinking,
yes,
I want you to stay here instead.
Yes.
So that was the example of that. But there was there was never a non-supportiveness about it. The only decision that came is, okay, coming here for a PhD. I did that for 3 years. Is after that, do I stay or do I go back? Which I had to go back. But then not going back was not an option either, because by that point I met my husband, and I couldn't not go back. I couldn't go back.
Yes, that's right. Yes, your life was here now. You'd planted the roots.
I started to build a life already.
You'd got some roots down, as I would call it. And then that's it. You're anchored there really now, and you grow from that point. Yeah, great. Yeah, all makes a lot of sense. All very helpful.
And also, look, some things that we do. I mean, if you're if you're working in corporate and in a very highly hierarchical organization, there is gonna come some sort of hierarchy and asking for permission to do stuff, because that's kind of the culture and that's how things are.
And people have certain responsibilities, and you do need to get their buy-in to it and stuff. So yes, it's not just bulldoze your way through everything. It's there's some etiquette and behavior to consider as well.
Having said that, don't go doing what we just said in the previous episode about making that mean something about you because something didn't happen in the way that you wanted to happen.
Sure.
And
Yes.
as I always said as well, you know, there's certain presentations you have to do and there's certain structure you have to follow. But
Yep.
then after a while, if it becomes an nitpicking exercise of you have to do this and do that and whatever, you can just say, well, yeah, this enough is enough. Then I don't need any more permission. I've followed the structure. This is fine. But they don't make it another way of it becomes a habitual thing. You have to ask for your boss's permission to send its email, send this presentation, or do it in this certain way, or you go out to, you know, whatever. But then don't make it, oh, can I just say this in this meeting? Because you become kind of fearful of what will others think of you without realizing because of this hierarchical thing. And you gave an example a few weeks ago as well. You know, why wouldn't my boss say this in a meeting? And then you didn't think to say, why am I not saying? Why am I not saying this?
Why am I not saying it? Yeah,
it didn't even occur to you because everyone else was above you or whatever.
Correct.
So there
That's
is
right.
this pedestal thing comes
Yeah.
along. You put your boss or somebody else on a pedestal, which means that you're already in an inferior position, which you're not really. Just because in hierarchy you are doesn't mean as a person and as a strong skilled person you're not. So it's basically doing justice to who we are and what we do and our own skills.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good summary. Yeah, doing justice to who we are. That's really good. Yeah, I like that.
And as a result, speaking our truth when it is necessary. And yes, you can ask for permission. Yes, you can do things by the book and behave in a certain way. But when it starts to challenge your values and challenge the person that you are,
it becomes personal to you when it's starting to affect you as a person rather than the environment you're working in, I suppose.
And you got to become aware that am I making this too personal? Am I taking on other people's opinions or other people's ways of being upon myself, which again something that I used to do a lot.
And that's something I've done, I suppose, subconsciously trying to sort of bridge the gap and trying to get some unity between me and the person, behaving in a way that perhaps they would behave more so than myself. I mean, sometimes you can see people that do things better than you. If somebody presents better than you, you think, well, I'll just take some guidelines from them. So it can be, that's not actually attacking you as a person, is it? That's you sort of just admiring something in somebody and saying, I'd like to be more like that. Almost what we were saying last week. What does good look like? Well, good to me when I'm on my feet presenting would be like how Peter does it, for example. So I'm going to watch Peter and he's going to kind of be my hero, my mentor, I suppose, my sort of example of how to do stuff. And that's okay.
But being inspired by someone is different to putting them on a pedestal to think that he's better than me. Therefore, you're immediately inferior to him in some way, and therefore you're going to behave in that way as well. Because
absolutely, I've been there and done that. It's an awful thing, I should have said when you were talking about what's the things have I learned working from you. I should have said, well, there is one bad thing about working with you, Chulai. I should have said this.
What's that then?
And that is that I didn't start working with you about 20 years ago.
Oh, well.
That's
You're exactly where you need to be, Ian. Don't worry about it.
Well, that's right. Again, we've talked about that so often. You can turn the clock back or you can't turn the clock back, but we want to turn it back sometime. But if only. If only I'd have learned some of the stuff I know now, 20 years ago, I could have put that into much better practice. So, if people are at work, starting in their careers and whatever and suffering from some of the stuff that we're talking about, now really is the time to benefit from it. I really urge you to learn from my experience and what I perhaps lacked in some ways, learn from it and have a much more fulfilled working life. Really, my working life in industry was fulfilling in most respects, but I've reflected on the fact, with all the things we've talked about, how it could have been better, how I could have played to my strengths more, been more productive, and everything could have been much, much better.
Yeah.
But it wasn't bad, and I'm not complaining by any
Yeah.
means.
The thing is, all that we've learned in our industry times have led us to be here now to help
Yeah,
more
yeah,
people
true.
and help other people from our own experience and do
Yeah,
things differently. And it's because of that experience that we are both here right now. And there's
true.
no
Yeah.
regrets, there's just a
Mm.
celebration of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm glad that you're saying to people to, yeah, there's never a bad time to start. Just start now. There's no time like present.
yeah.
Start with listening to our podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel to
Oh,
make
yeah.
sure
You
that
got
you
my
never
line
miss
in there
an
for me.
episode. And yeah, listen, go back to the very first episode that we started all those 2 years ago, probably now I forget, but in terms of the videos, or go back
Yes.
to all the podcasts of very first episode we started again in October 2022. So it's a lot to listen, a lot to go through, but just do so because yeah, there's so much to learn. Before we finish today, I just want to make sure, why do I keep seeking permission from others? Because you already don't feel good enough in yourself. And how do you want to feel good enough in yourself? Go back to last week's episode and listen, because we talked about the reasons why you don't feel good enough. And we talked about a great way to feel good enough already now. And stop asking for permission from other people. You already know the answer. Just trust yourself. The answers will come out when you stop asking outside of it. Okay? So until next week, have a great week.